Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Critical Weight Theory, where we sometimes examine the U.S. Constitution, its strengths, vulnerabilities, and the ongoing struggle to protect democracy. And, that's when we're not doing, pop culture reviews, movies, TV shows, etc. Today we're looking at a critical topic: how President Donald Trump has repeatedly tested, ignored, and outright violated the U.S. Constitution. So we're not going to so much look at current events. Oddly enough, you don't need to fully look at those in order to discuss the topic, although, of course, I have commented on what's happening, recently, at least a little bit. But oddly enough, this is going to focus a little bit more on his first term. So, as the nation grapples with the fallout of his presidency, I'll discuss the breaches, the consequences, and what it will take to repair and restore the rule of law. That's an interesting topic. So, one of the first things to mention is the Emoluments Clause, which supposedly is designed to block anyone from profiting from the presidency. So let's start with that. The Emoluments Clause. The founding fathers were clear: no president should profit from the office while serving. That's why Jimmy Carter famously distanced himself from the peanut farm that he had previously owned when he became the president. But Trump openly defied this principle. From his hotels to his golf resorts, foreign governments and domestic political groups spent millions knowing that their dollars were flowing directly into the Trump organization. Lawsuits were filed, ethics watchdogs sounded alarms, but accountability remained elusive and still does to this day. In fact, he's selling products from the White House, actually. So he's, directly uh, violating the premise that a U.S. president should not be profiting from their office. He's making it abundantly clear that he is interested in violating that clause. So, of course, you've also got the obstruction of justice stuff, the Mueller report and beyond. With the obstruction of justice, the Mueller report outlined at least 10 instances where Trump attempted to obstruct investigations into Russian interference in the 2016 election, from firing FBI Director James Comey to pressuring White House counsel Don McGahn to fire Robert Mueller. Trump repeatedly tried to block legal scrutiny. Yet, due to Department of Justice policy against indicting a sitting president, he faced no immediate legal consequences. That's why I've said that, if if we want to hold people accountable, we need to have legal consequences. We need to make sure that presidents actually have less power in the future, if possible, and that they face legal consequences. You know, so another thing was the abuse of power, and that could be, exemplified by the Ukraine scandal and impeachment. It's perhaps one of the most blatant violations. It was Trump's first impeachment that resulted from it, and a stunning abuse of power. He pressured Ukraine's president to dig up dirt on Joe Biden in exchange for military aid. The act, using foreign policy for personal political gain, was a textbook violation of his oath to uphold the Constitution. And I'll get into that more in a little bit here. The House of Representatives impeached him, but the Senate, which was controlled by his party, acquitted him. So, what did that say about accountability? So, okay, how does using foreign policy for personal political gain violate the Constitution? Well, the US Constitution, anyway, that's what we're talking about here specifically. So, using foreign policy for personal political gain can violate the US Constitution in several ways, particularly by undermining principles of separation of powers, abuse of power, bribery, and election integrity. So, here's specifically how, if you look at abuse of power and the take care clause, Article 2, Section 3, the president has a constitutional duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. If a president uses foreign policy to serve personal interests rather than the national interest, they fail in this duty, which can be seen as an abuse of power. There's also the bribery clause, Article 2, Section 4. The Constitution states that a president can be impeached for treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Very clear language there. If a president solicits a foreign government's help, that is an investigation into a political rival, in exchange for U.S. foreign aid or other benefits, it could constitute bribery. Then more on the emoluments clause, which is Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8, and Article 2, Section 1, Clause 7. They prohibit foreign federal, or no, they not foreign. The provisions prohibit federal officials. I read that as foreign for some reason. Uh, but anyway, uh, the federal officials include the president. They prohibit him from receiving, or her from receiving, gifts or benefits from foreign states without congressional approval. And really, I don't know why Congress would approve of that anyway, but I guess that would be something they could make exceptions for. So if a president trades foreign policy decisions for political favors or financial gain, they may violate this clause. Now, the far right U.S. Supreme Court is a personality cult that favors Trump, so they probably would say that he does not violate that clause, no matter how, clearly it could be proven. In fact, they would say that he probably hasn't violated any laws because they're in his pocket. Um, but there's also the interference in elections and violations of federal law. Sort of generally, the Constitution establishes free and fair elections, Article 1 and Article 2. So, seeking foreign interference in U.S. elections violates federal campaign finance laws, which prohibit foreign contributions, including things of value like opposition research. So, there's the separation of powers and congressional oversight angle, which involves Article 1, Sections 2 and 3. Congress has the power to conduct oversight and impeach officials for misconduct. So, if a president manipulates foreign policy for personal political benefit, they obstruct democratic accountability, potentially leading to impeachment. And a key historical example, of course, is the Trump Ukraine scandal from around 2019, where President Trump was impeached for allegedly pressuring Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden in exchange for military aid. This was seen as a violation of these constitutional principles. So there's also, of course, the big lie and the insurrection. It's not going to end there. Unfortunately, it's not the final straw. There have been further straws after this. But in a saner world, this would have been the end. You know, uh, January 6th, 2021, Trump's months long campaign to overturn a legitimate election culminated in the deadly attack on the Capitol. He spread false claims of voter fraud, pressured state officials to find votes, and ultimately incited a violent mob to disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. And he was trying to actually get his vice president to, disrupt the peaceful transfer. He was he also had the false electors, the fake electors, and for example, in the state of Michigan, regarding that. They actually apparently had the fake electors sleeping in the state capitol building overnight. Like teenage kids who broke into an abandoned house or something. Looking for dirty magazines. Only in this case, they were looking to influence an election. You know, it's something like that. But the Constitution was under siege, quite literally, with all this stuff going on. So his second impeachment followed, but again, the Senate failed to convict because it's largely in his pocket. So the road to restoration is going to be very bumpy, to say the least. So where do we go from here? Trump's presidency exposed and continues to expose critical weaknesses in the system, loopholes that allows a president to act with near impunity, and that includes, of course, as I mentioned, the US Supreme Court, which has literally stated that there is near absolute immunity for any presidential actions, which means that technically a US president could be an outright serial killer, you know, going around killing people, and if he can convince enough members of the of the government that it's his governmental duty, and the U.S. Supreme Court believes him, because it's a personality cult, well, then he can get off the hook. That's that's what's going on here. That sounds crazy, but theoretically, that's exactly what that means. So it's really a very strong reason for any sort of psychopaths to strive to become, president or anything like that, in his orbit, because he can get away with anything. Or if you're in his orbit and stay, within his favorable perception, you can get away with all kinds of shit, really, theoretically. So, restoring the Constitution means reinforcing checks and balances and adding new ones, ensuring that no future president can so easily trample democratic norms. So, will Congress act? I don't know. We'll see. Will the courts uphold accountability? So far, that's been a mixed bag at best. There are definitely signs that it's not being effectively done. But the story isn't fully over yet. And most importantly, will the American people demand change? Well, that largely depends on how much damage is inflicted on them. Unfortunately, because it really does seem like things will have to get worse before they get better. People will have to be directly negatively impacted by a lot of these decisions that are being made. Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't that way. I wish there was an easier way, but that's literally what is happening right now. And we'll just have to largely see how the public reacts, how they're going to react to a number of things, like the growth of a potential mercenary army that is a private army that, serves the oligarchic class rather than actual self-defense functions for the American citizenry. So we'll have to see how that unfolds. It's a dystopian sort of thing to be witnessing, but hey, that's where we're at right now. So that's it for this episode of Critical Weight Theory, looking at the system under repair, hopefully, maybe someday at least. So if you found my little discussion points important, go ahead and share it with others and join the conversation. Until next time, let's keep working toward the restoration of the Constitution, and hopefully will improve the ways that it is enforced and just generally implemented. It's a dystopian reality, but it's a reality that we have to face.